Hermes draw near, and to my prayer incline, in arts gymnastic and in fraud divine.
Dire weapon of the tongue which men revere, be present, Hermes, and thyself plant here.
Welcome to Third Eye Bind, episode 40, Hauntings. Trigger warning, this episode contains brief mention of suicide and violence. Viewer discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Laura.
And I'm Caitlin.
And welcome to Third Eye Bind.
Today we are your ghost hosts.
Because today's topic is Hauntings. This is also our season 4 closer.
Our finale. It's finale.
It's finale day.
Finale.
So we thought we would get very dressed up for you.
Yes.
In a spooky kind of way. And do a really fun topic that I know a lot of people want to hear about.
Absolutely. And so many of you commented on our Instagram that you thought we were talking about Beetlejuice when we were wearing something completely different a few weeks ago.
Yes.
And Beetlejuice really is a story of a haunting. So here we are giving you our best Dietz family
decor.
But before we get started, if you like this podcast, we invite you to please pause the episode and go ahead and subscribe, leave comments on YouTube, leave a review. 5 stars is preferable.
It's a preference.
It's a preference.
Not a choice, but
we're not forcing you, but we are encouraging you.
We would love it if you paused
Absolutely.
Right now and did the review.
Leave reviews. It's super helpful for us to help keep getting the podcast out there to other folks like you who want to hear this type of stuff.
Want to hear this deep knowledge and insight that we have to offer.
And if you love the podcast, please consider supporting us by becoming a patron. Yeah. At patreon.com/thirdeyebind. New patrons of tier 2 and up get a really fucking cool sticker pack. Holographic sticker pack designed by Laura. It's awesome. Check it out.
It's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Before we get into card pulls as well, Laura, is there anything that you've been working on over at Lady Moon Co. that you'd like to talk about?
Well, our Magic Morsels Oracle deck is still poppin' and is fresh out of the oven of my brain. And I did want to offer our listeners 20% off of those decks with the code Morsels. You can do that and get yourself a little snack.
Yes. Over at ladymoon.co.
Ladymoon.co or etsy.com.
Nice.
Etsy.com/shop/Lady Moon Company. Or you can search Lady Moon Company in Etsy because Lady Moon Co. was not available at the time. But it's mine and it's trademarked. So I don't know why, actually.
I don't know why someone would keep it. Yeah. That's funny.
Whatever. I'll sue you. It's fine. It's no big deal.
It's fine.
It's not a big deal.
Does your code work on Etsy and on your website?
Yes.
Amazing. So cool.
Yeah. What about, do you have any offerings for our listeners?
Yeah. So.
Or updates?
Yes. Well, so many of you helped support my Offerings Oracle Kickstarter. Those are being manufactured right this minute, and they
exciting.
should be ready to ship to you in July, maybe a little sooner. We'll see. But I will be opening pre-orders for the deck really soon. So you should go to my website, www.motherofmystics.com. Get on my email list so that you know when orders are open.
Cool.
Yes.
Hauntings.
I'm really excited to talk about this topic. I'm actually going to be teaching a class in November on this topic. Another reason to join my email list. So let's see what the cards have in store for us today. I'm excited. Ooh, shuffling with gloves is weird.
Are we going to get the 3 of Swords again or whatever the hell we kept getting?
Ooh, I got a big chill this time.
Oh, I just got one.
Ooh, it's like the wave.
Hauntings. Hauntings.
Yeah.
Yeah?
No, I was saying yes to the card, not to you.
Oh.
I was talking to the card.
Oh, I'm
So I
sorry.
pulled the 7 of Cups. And I think this is a really beautiful message for this episode, because when we arrive at the 7 of Cups, we are at a moment when there are so many different choices, opportunities, understandings in front of us. And it's an invitation to do whatever work you need to do, whether it's divination, taking a deep breath, talking things out, considering your current circumstances, asking questions. Do the work that you need to do to figure out which of these cups is right for you. And when it comes to hauntings and spirits in general, I believe that it is important to do our due diligence to understand why certain spirits are making themselves known to us. Because the truth is, there isn't just one standard reason out there. There are so many different reasons why a spirit may be appearing to you, may be active in your space, may be active around you. And by turning to the cups, the suit of our psychic and spiritual abilities, we are able to discern what it is that's going on so that we can make a choice about how to approach the situation and the spirit at hand. The other reason I love this card is that we have pulled it this season because I remember reading the lyrics. Some of them want to use you. Some of them want to be used by you.
That's perfect.
And it's perfect because some of them want to move through you. Some of them want you to tap into them and work with them.
Yeah.
And
you never know.
You never know.
Until you figure it out.
And it's not always malevolent, and it's not always benevolent.
No.
And it's that
sometimes it's a mix of both.
Sometimes it's a little bit of everything. And the only way to find out is to put in the effort.
Yeah.
To find out.
You know what's interesting is that when you were reading that, or when you pulled that card and I realized what card it was, I was almost thinking about it from the spirit's perspective and not ours.
Oh.
Like, not what we should do, but what the spirits choose to do to interact with us and why. Because I think that's really the question at the end of the day, is like, why is this spirit choosing this method? Maybe they're making a similar choice.
Absolutely.
In interacting with us. You know, it's like, well, where, we don't know for certain where they exist or why, but they're reaching out or they're making noise for a reason. Like, why are they choosing to do that? You know, like, and it's just a very symbiotic kind of choosing.
Yeah, it's both ways.
You know,
absolutely.
So that's what I was thinking, because I think we've talked about this in like our ghosts episode before.
Yeah.
And the main thing I see changing in the paranormal community and paranormal hunting community is having a lot more empathy for the spirits that they're dealing with, and not just going in there and riling up a place when they're investigating or trying to make contact and pissing off a spirit or insulting a spirit just to get a reaction. Like, it's more becoming about respecting, asking questions, asking, how can I help you? And actually doing that and trying to figure out that. In a lot of the time, that seems to help the haunting situation, so that the living and the dead can live together harmoniously. And it's not just about exorcising the spirit or getting rid of the spirit or moving on the spirit and getting rid of the spirit. It's more like quelling, working with. And I think that's really interesting and probably the right way to go about a haunting
Absolutely.
Depending on what it is. It's
right.
like a case-by-case basis. Yeah, so what do you think, like, from your opinion, like, what is a haunting? Like, where do the spirits end up? Like, what's your sort of, like, knowledge or opinion on that?
Ooh, I've got so many thoughts. thoughts. Also, I love what you mentioned about like paranormal investigation shows shifting the way they approach paranormal situations, because I feel like so much of it in the 90s and early 2000s was very like dude bro Ghostbusters, we're gonna get this thing out of, or like, let's see if we can make
it's a demon, like, every time
poking a bear in a cage instead of showing empathy. So I think it's really cool that more of those shows are focusing on a kinder approach to engaging with the paranormal.
I would imagine it's hard to not react out of fear.
Totally.
Because it's fucking scary. Like, if I saw a ghost, I'd probably shit my pants. And then I'd be like, all right, what do you need? Like, but then I think, again, I've mentally, like, I consume a lot of paranormal television and podcasts. And, you know, I don't know. The reactions are, for someone who doesn't speak to spirits actively or in a way that I'm, like, comfortable with that all the time, I'd be pretty scared. Mm-hmm. But I feel like I'm just very curious about the subject, and I think about it in a way that's like, okay, well, what's really happening, and what's the spectrum? Because everyone's got different sort of opinions about it. So where do you kind of lie on the, like, spectrum of hauntings and ghosty ghosts?
All over the place.
Right, which is
I lay all over the place, and it really is a case by case situation. I think that if we want to break it down and categorize it to make it a little bit easier to understand, I tend to break it into a few different categories. The first is harmless spirits who are just, like, busy. They're just hanging out. You know, maybe this was their house before, maybe this was their land before, maybe they are your ancestors or your guides, and they just want you to know that they're around. And so they're jingling a bell or flickering the lights, little things like that. Very cute. Love it. Then we have our tricksters. And tricksters can vary. Tricksters exist on their own spectrum. And if you haven't already, go listen to the trickster episode in season 2 or 3.
2.
We've had so many seasons.
So many seasons.
So many. But tricksters can fluctuate between being very harmless and just kind of silly and really inviting you to be more playful. And that's why they'll do playful things like bounce a ball or move your keys around. They're playing games with you. Tricksters can also be dangerous, and they can pretend to be something that they're not, pretend to be someone that they're not, because they are hungry for something from you. Then we have I call them guardian spirits or land ancestors. Yeah. And these are spirits that are protecting a place. And they don't take it lightly when someone, in their eyes, is disrespecting their space. And it's not that they are evil spirits, but when we consider that the United States is a country that was founded on indigenous genocide and the enslavement of African people, and continues to systemically oppress and kill people of color, queer folks, all of those spirits who have been harmed by U.S. nationalism, like, they still exist here. Some of them have transitioned on, but some of them have become protectors of the land and protectors of their descendants. And if they feel like someone in a house or someone on a property or a museum or whatever are not respecting the space or the people who the space belongs to, like, they can get really turbulent. And in those cases, it's not really a matter of exercising a spirit, but it's more like what you said. It's about learning to cohabitate.
Yeah.
Or figuring out how to reconcile the wrong.
Yeah. I'm thinking of an episode of, I think it was Kindred Spirits, which is a show I recommend checking out. Mm-hmm. They're very mindful of, the hosts are really mindful of that sort of thing. But the people were, I think I talked about this on the ghost episode, but I'm going to talk about it again.
Yeah.
I believe the homeowners were seeing like native spirits by the river and stuff. Do you remember this? Mm-hmm. And it was like a water source, and they were like guarding the water source is what they discerned. And so they called in like relative, like tribal members that are alive today to sort of like act as a liaison and to give ritual to them. And I think that made it and let the homeowners know like what they could do to like, you know, live peacefully or something. So it's like those solutions rather than like trying to fight them and kick them out, which is,
but also like maybe you don't need to live there. I know it's not fun.
Yeah, I mean,
but sometimes like you got to give the land back.
Right.
And okay, so another group, poltergeists. These are malevolent. Why am I struggling with that word today? Malevolent entities that feed off of a host. And the host might be an object. The host might be a person. The host might be a place. But they are attached to someone or something. And they feed themselves from whatever energy you've got, be it fear, frustration, anger, apathy, chaos.
Because the thing I've noticed with poltergeists, a lot of this, because I was confused when I was first like, is a poltergeist caused by, like, it can appear when people like have this symbiotic relationship with like an energy, and then they feed each other almost. So if it's like, if someone's like an addict or like, you know, doing crazy shit, like making meth in the kitchen or whatever, like I'm sure there's like a meth poltergeist just like, yes, man.
They are attracted to that energy. And they like see this as an opportunity to latch onto someone. If you have really negative energy for whatever reason. Or like you're going through a depressive episode, you know, like you're feeling that way. Like those are times when you are left, not to freak everyone out, but those are times when you tend to be vulnerable to those types of spirits. Because, you know, like when I'm in a depressive episode, I'm not doing my best when it comes to tending to my altar. I can barely shower. I can barely brush my teeth. You tend to get sick more when you're in those spaces. And body so it makes sense. You know, you have trouble sleeping, but at the same time can't get out of bed. And it leaves you vulnerable to those types of spirits attaching themselves to you because they're like, ooh, delicious. This person can't fight back. But also if you're like naughty, like if you're naughty, if you thrive on chaos, you attract spirits who thrive on chaos, and then they move through you to create greater chaos. But like I can't tell you how many clients I've worked with who have dealt with depression or, trigger warning, like suicidal ideation, or like body image stuff, or
that's a big one,
like trauma from their parents, unkind words from their parents. And then as an adult, they're like, I know it's more than me because I've been doing all this work. I go to therapy, I take care of myself, and I still can't shake this. And what I've found in many of these cases is there was an entity attached to them that was drawn in by whatever had originally happened. And like often they linger right here behind the ear. And they like whisper, they like reinforce that shitty stuff back to them over and over again. So like no matter what they do, they're like, I can't shake it. It's like, it's this thing living right here. And I've literally like just this year, I've helped 3 different femmes with this type of situation. And I just want to say, like, if you've ever been in that place and you feel like, I know it's more than just me, like, I believe you, and there are spiritual practitioners out there who can help you with this type of thing. Then we have memories.
Residual hauntings.
Exactly. Yes. Residual
hauntings where it's like on a loop. It's a loop being played, and it's not an active, intelligent spirit.
Right.
It's just more of an imprint of energy that actually makes a lot of sense scientifically. There was one case I remember where there was a lot of quartz around, and quartz can, like, I'm not a scientist, sorry, embed and record like frequencies and amplify frequencies in some sort of way. And they were hearing residual conversations from the past, or like
from like court cases.
No, just from like from, I don't know where, it was some land. Like they were just hearing, because there was so much quartz around, like the environment. It was just like,
oh, quartz.
Oh, quartz. Did you
Quartz? I was thinking quartz.
The quartz
like
system.
COURTS.
Oh no.
I was like, whoa.
No, but I mean, hey, there could be a haunted court.
There could. I don't know why there wouldn't be.
I know there are like gallows and stuff where you'll like hear some of the rope snapping and stuff.
The
quartz
holds the voices. Yeah. I believe that.
So that in terms of residual, like that was one of the reasons Mike's laughing.
Mike's dying.
Why did I say it weird? Oh my God.
They do sound exactly the same. Those two, quartz and quartz.
Oh, they do.
They sound the same.
Quartz. Quartz. Well, I don't know where your minds are, but
it's the crystals.
This is a witch show. But yeah, if something traumatic happens in a space, it can leave that sort of loop, like someone walking up the stairs and then disappearing. Yeah. Every night, same thing, same time.
Like in
walking up the
that
stairs
movie we always talk about, which
one?
It was a miniseries on Netflix.
We always
and the lady comes out of the water and she goes up the stairs.
Like Hill House, but not Hill House.
Thank you, but the second one, Bly Manor. Yeah. That's a loop.
She was so scary.
Yeah, and she didn't become like a conscious spirit until the other girl like jumped inside of her. Right?
Yeah. Or like
spoilers.
Yes. Yeah. So that's interesting. Yeah, and I don't know why. I can't tell you why that happens. I can't tell you why, like, some spirits, when they die of traumatic causes, stay, and why some of them go. Or go, I don't know where they go, but, like, I don't know. You know, there's lots of theories.
That's part of the reason why in Espiritismo we teach ancestral elevation is so important.
Right.
Because so many spirits do get stuck earthbound, even if they're not turbulent.
Yeah.
Like spirits get stuck earthbound after they pass away because they need help processing everything that happened in their lives. And when you think about like us, the living, like we need help processing everything that's happening in our lives. I would need
help processing things if I died.
It only makes sense that especially if you didn't have help while you were still alive, that you still are in need of assistance after you pass away. And depending on the situation, like you can become a turbulent spirit or just become a lingering. Whenever I find spirits who are not turbulent but are earthbound, they always show up in this like gray space. And that's what I call it, the gray place. Maybe some people call it purgatory. But they're just like hanging out and it's cold and they're hungry and they're thirsty because they're stuck. And when we pray for those spirits to receive their assistance, whatever assistance they need, then that kind of releases them from this gray place so that they can move on to whatever is next, be it the ancestral realms, becoming a ancestor, reincarnation, whatever it is, rest.
And it's like, you think, oh, I just say a prayer and then that helps. What? But like if you think about words and you think about spells and what words can do and what even like when you're having a really shitty time and then somebody does something really nice for you that's very simple, and then that just like fills you with some sort of hope, or like that happened to me yesterday. You know, shitty day, got a really lovely gift of a cool graphic novel in the mail from my best guy friend, and like unprompted, you know, and I was just like, oh, that's so sweet. Like I really, really needed that. Or even if someone just opens the door for you or tells you you look nice when you feel like shit inside. Like, so if those little things, those little gestures, I would imagine that when they cross over the veil would be powerful.
Absolutely.
Because they're earthly and they're from the living, I'm guessing. Because we have power in some sort of way to them, or like some sort of source of energy, right? Those small efforts and small rituals, or even just saying, you're right for feeling terrible for how you died or something, or just any sort of, I feel you.
Validation.
Fist bump. And then they're like, cool. And then they just like go somewhere.
Absolutely. Well, when you think about like I don't even know about like pre-colonial, but like pre-capitalism.
Yeah.
I guess pre-colonial too. But we used to spend so much more time on death rites of passage.
That's the other part of this. We
used to spend so much more time, and every culture has their own unique way of honoring death. But here in the Western world, it's like you're in a freezer, then you're in a box, or you're in the incinerator, and you're lucky if your family members get the afternoon off to see it happen.
Or to even see your body and to accept it's very removed emotionally.
It's very sterilized.
Very sterilized.
And it's got to fit in so you don't miss too much work.
Even in like colonial times, I think even up until, I don't know, that would be very interesting.
I feel like I need to research a little bit.
But I know like they'd be like, hey, grandma's dead in the living room for like 3 days, you know, and people would like visit and like depending on whatever was, just like they would photograph dead people and prop them up like they were like, but they'd be like dead. You know? Yeah. And then that's like Victorian, like mourning stuff.
That
and
makes
like
sense.
keeping the hair.
The Victorians
were
like, really into mourning.
Yes. That era was with spiritualism and things like that. The connection and you know, what's interesting about like spiritualism and like spirituality having moments, we've kind of touched on this before, is that it usually happens like in times of war or famine or like where there's a lot of death and they need a way to process it. And it's too much, and they need to see it, and they interact with it more because it's so shocking. Yeah, like that kind of thing.
But it's kind of like in a weird way, like a positive.
It's like cathartic
effects, you know, that people are spending more time talking about death.
It is positive effect.
Yeah,
for I think all parties involved. Like, you know,
absolutely.
I wouldn't want. I wouldn't want some to die and then have like no one talk about me or like go see me or visit me, or like I would be real sad and haunt all of you motherfuckers if I was just like forgotten, you know, or not given a tree or like a place to like be or remembered. Like it's kind of shitty, you know.
When working with the spirits, something that I've found that so many of them have in common is this fear of being forgotten. Yeah. This fear that their lives were in vain. Yeah. That their legacy doesn't exist.
Yeah. Or they don't know that it still exists for whatever reason. Like, there's been a few cases where there was like one where it was in a museum dedicated to a dude, forgotten author, let's say. But his statue had been moved to another area of the museum for whatever reason. And then somebody else's statue was in with his stuff, with his books for whatever reason. And they started to have activity because the guy was like, excuse me, this is my place and I want to be with my things. Or like, he didn't like where shit was moved. You know, like, he didn't like how the living were moving his stuff around. And it's like, I'd probably do that. Yeah. Because I get anal
You're
about
like,
that now.
Doesn't go there.
Like, I don't like people touching my shit. Like, that's, the possessiveness over, like, the living objects that they left behind, which goes into our psychometry episode where these objects are still like coveted by the people that owned them in a way. And it's like that holds a lot of power too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Very interesting. Have you ever dealt with a case, because you do exorcisms and things, that you couldn't help somebody with in some sort of way, or like it was so intense that you were just like, I need assistance, or this is like a demon, or like what's like the most intense like haunting or attachment that you've helped somebody with?
The most intense one was this year. I assisted someone who has had, it's going to make me cry, had this entity attached to them since probably they were an infant. And they had been dealing with this entity their entire lives, just like plaguing their mental health. And every time they thought they would get better, like this thing would tear them down again. And
did they experience, like, how did they know it was there? Were they haunted, like, in a traditional sense?
It started to get more turbulent right before they contacted me.
So they would see shit and hear shit, and
stuff would be moving around.
The typical haunting
and
situation.
They started to become depleted. Like you could see, like the light was coming out of their skin. Their eyes were really dark. Just their hair was limp. They were like really not okay. And I did their exorcism in person. And it varies. Like sometimes I'll do exorcisms and I'm really just having a conversation with the spirits who are there. And other times, like I become possessed by my own spirits.
Who go and like...
and do the thing.
Do some shit.
Yeah. And so in this one, one of my crossroads spirits mounted me. And like I could... It's almost like Blythe, you know how they tell the kids, like, you're tucked away in one part when we take over your body? That's kind of what it feels like, except I'm more conscious of what's going on. It's almost like I see an aerial view of what's happening. Wow. And my spirit was, like, addressing the demon. It was a demon. And they, like, told me the name, and then it vanished from my brain. And they're like, don't say that name. And I was like, okay. But my spirit was addressing the demon and like talking about him and saying like, I've met you before and I know what you do. And I know that like you thrive off of abusing like women in particular. Like that was his thing. And he kept talking to him. And then this is going to sound crazy.
It's third eye bind, baby.
It's third eye bind, baby. My spirit unhinged his jaw and I felt my jaw like crack.
Whoa.
And he swallowed the demon. And I started like heaving, and my client's sibling grabbed a bucket for me to throw up in. And my spirit was like, you have to swallow it. You have to swallow it. And so like I took a drink I had poured rum for my spirit. And so I like took a drink of it and I like swallowed it. And then my spirit like blessed my client, and then he pulled out his tooth.
Oh, right.
And he put it in her hand. I told you about this. He put the tooth in her hand and said, like, for your protection now. And then one of my other guides came through, who's the spirit who did the exorcism was a fire spirit. And then one of my water spirits mounted me, and one of my old mentors who's passed away mounted me, and they did like the gentle stuff and cleansed her and poured more life into her and things like that, and gave her a really long pep talk. And then when it was done, her eyes had changed color.
Wow.
Like they were bright brown, like amber stones, beautiful. And her skin changed. And then I saw her again recently, and she looked amazing.
Oh, good.
Amazing.
So
and she's doing well. She's doing really well. It worked. So good. Like the days following, she was really sick.
Yeah.
Which is very normal. My mentor, Chiron, calls it spirit surgery. And so when you have big things like this happen, it's normal that you feel kind of yucky and under the weather afterwards for a little while. And then all of a sudden you're better. But my favorite part of the story is that a few weeks later, my client's sibling reached out to me and said, hey, do you remember when your spirit handed my sibling a tooth? And I kind of didn't remember. I was like, oh, and she was like, she grew a molar.
She grew a molar. That's fucking crazy.
She grew a brand new molar.
She gave her a tooth.
Right, like she's in her late 20s. There's no reason why she should be like growing random teeth.
Yeah.
But my spirit gave her a molar to protect her, and then she grew one in her mouth. Fucking crazy, yeah.
So when you say like your spirit gave her a tooth, how did that like visually how did she receive, like how does that happen? Is it just like miming of that happening?
Basically,
and
it's miming. Yeah. He like popped my mouth open and I pulled on one of my teeth, but I didn't actually pull it out. And then he put it in her hand
and said what it was
and closed it, and she put it on her heart.
Aww.
And the other thing my client's sibling said was that morning, I think, her sister had found one of her grandmother's necklaces, and it was like a heart pendant, and she had blessed it and put it on her. And it was just really interesting that like the tooth went in her hand, she put it in her heart, and then it grew into her mouth. Like it was just fascinating.
Crazy.
The whole thing was magical, and she's doing really well now.
That's very
But
cool.
that's probably the most intense experience I've had. There are certain people that like I haven't been able to help because they came to me looking for help with a haunting in their home. And this has happened on 3 separate occasions.
Right, like typical ghosty footsteps, black shadow man.
Exactly. Yeah. And like the last
All
one,
the
like
hits.
they were having like some real turbulence in their house, like scary stuff. But when I told them that like I couldn't explain what I was doing until I go to the house and like see what's going on.
Yeah.
Like they got really weird.
Did they want more of a bro ghost approach?
I guess so. They're like, just come with the Ghostbuster machine. And it's like, that's not how this works.
Right.
Like there are some spirits that need to be removed, like the one that was attached to my client. But that's not always the case.
Right. So they wanted you to say like, you're going to get rid of it, right?
Yeah.
Before you need
and
to
then
assess.
They also wanted me to do it for free.
Oh, right. No.
Which I don't do.
Now, some people will. Like, if there's...
Some people will.
Ghost investigator groups, they love that shit.
Yes.
They're like, let me... And that's cool.
Call them.
That's cool. I don't know that their practices are, like, ancestrally sound or within a lineage a lot of the time, which is cool if they're, like, figuring out their own way to do it. But, you know, there's something spicy, in a good way, about working with, like... a curandera or like I don't know, just like a healer that's from like a lineage that is sound. Like that's why people call it Catholic priests, and I would imagine, right? Because they're like, they like the shit too. Okay. Like they're going to tell you every spirit's like a fucking demon. Yeah. But like, you know, which is what I've seen a lot of when they call, that's where I get twisted with like the demon thing, because I know not all spirits are demons, and I feel like the priests like to go, you know...
Every spirit that's not the Holy Spirit is a demon.
Yeah, and I feel like they overuse the D word a little bit.
I agree.
And then they'll try to just get rid of it, and... It sounds like with what you do, there's a lot more like discernment in taking care of the entity as well, unless it's like a fucking shit show. Like that one you dealt with.
Yeah, like that one. You know? That was the first time my spirits ever used the D word.
Right,
demon.
Right.
That was the first time they ever actually told me, no, like they're like, bitch,
this
that's
is what
a demon.
You would
I was
call
like,
a demon. So like a demon, as in like a non-human malevolent entity, or like what? Because demons,
I don't know if that thing
or
used
if it
to
was
be human or not. I don't know.
Right, not sure.
I'm not sure, because my spirits were like, I almost feel like they were trying to protect me from knowing too much about it.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
Because they wouldn't tell me what I was doing. Usually they give me some like, these are some things you can expect, Kate, on the way. Yeah. But this time they were like, you're buying 2 coconuts, you're buying a giant thing of rum, and you're buying white flowers, and we'll tell you what to do when we get there. Right. And I was like, okay. Wow. I will trust.
The non-human or earthbound spirits, the elementals, those are the ones that really interest me and really creep me out, you know, because they're so... interesting. There's a show, I used to make fun of a lot called The Dead Files. You ever watch it?
No.
And it's this show.
The Dead Files?
It's The Dead Files. It's a psychic medium and a cop, an ex-cop. He's very like, hey.
Oh, I've heard of. You probably told me about this.
But they investigate the cases like separately and then they come together at the end. But
Yeah.
the way that she. I used to think she was full of shit because of the way that she has a sketch artist like draw what she's saying.
Yeah.
And then she'll go to the people at the end and be like, yeah, there's like this icky pile of goo that crawled up from the ground.
Yeah.
And then it's trying to eat your soul and it's trying to mount you. And I'd be like, what the fuck?
Okay.
But I actually, and I talked to you about it and you're like, no, that's actually the kind of shit that I see.
Yes.
And she'll be like, there's a really tall elemental and it keeps swinging against your house. And it's very just like creative to me and like very interesting, the things that she comes up with. And I'm like, I fucking believe her now.
Yes.
But she'll straight up be like, yeah, you're sick because of this thing. And if you don't leave, it's going to kill you.
Yeah, sometimes it's like that.
Yeah, the
sometimes
indecision
you have to go.
Is there anything you can do about it? Or do you need to leave your fucking house?
Yes.
And she'll be
I
like,
love
you
that
need to
about her.
fucking leave your house. Yeah, I think you'd enjoy her methods.
I love that about her.
Because it's like, it's that extreme, but I feel like that's accurately like what's going on. Because sometimes they'll be like, the minute I step in the house, I got cancer or whatever. And she's like, you're going to die if like you don't get out of the house or if you don't do X, Y, Z.
Sometimes it's like that.
There's prescriptive methods and they're often like, and they'll be like, are you really going to do this? Take this advice. And they're like, yeah. Then at the end, it'll be like, the family did step 1 and it got kind of better. Or they'll be like, they did everything right away. And you can tell like the level they're willing to take responsibility for the haunting or whatever. And the level of which they think she's full of shit.
Totally.
It's really fucking interesting.
That's why
you should watch that show.
So particular about clients that I accept for this service. Like, it's not just something I've advertised on my website. It's like an if you know, you know kind of thing. And when I'm done, usually my guide Felicita or the spirit of my old mentor Delia will come through and they like give homework. Like I call it aftercare. Yeah. And they're like, if you don't do these things, you absolutely run the risk of either that coming back or something else taking its place.
Yeah.
And I like cannot stress enough how serious my clients need to take that aftercare, because if you don't do those steps, like it might not work out. And even the like less harmful spirits, the ones that they need to become friendly with instead, like if you don't do the steps, usually those types of spirits will ask for some sort of offering and some sort of altar, and I'm like, but if you don't do the things, if you don't bury 3 silver fish in your backyard like I told you to, like shit's gonna get real fast.
Yeah, and I feel like people oftentimes, at least on that show I've seen, they just want whatever it is gone.
Yeah.
And she'll most of the time be like, okay. But if she like wants to help a spirit, she'll be like, okay, I can take the old woman's spirit with me when I leave and I'll help her. But this one, you're going to need one male priest who's very aggressive in personality. Like she'll get very specific.
I kind of love that.
No, it's really interesting.
Yeah,
She'll be
okay,
like,
I'm going to watch this.
You'll also need like a pagan healer that knows how to do this. I need you to, ideally they do it on the same day. Like it's very specific.
I love that. That's that good Hierophant energy.
She's pretty cool. So
that's why it's important that like when you're dealing with this stuff, you find someone who actually knows what they're doing.
It's pretty detailed.
Because it really is very prescripted and regimented.
And weird, like the things that she sees and like it's, I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what you think, but
I remember you telling me about like the slime bally stuff, and like more often than not, like that
the stuff that she draws.
The story I talked about earlier, like that felt more like, I don't know. I don't think it was a man. I don't know what it was.
Right.
But usually they're like, if you've seen Spirited Away, they're these little furry black like ball spirits. They look like that, or they look like fucking centipedes. The gross furry ones.
I think she's talked about that kind of shit too.
And I like always gag, or it's like,
Yeah.
And then I start to like heave while my spirits are like getting rid of it. And they're like, I feel them patting about. They're like, get over it. Like, you just have to get over it.
You're the vessel. You're the vessel.
Exactly.
Sorry. This is your calling. Sorry.
You chose this life.
You chose this life. Sorry. That's so interesting.
But yeah, those are the more common ones.
Yeah.
And they really are surprisingly common.
They don't all look like pilgrim ladies in old-timey dresses,
No.
you know?
But they can.
But they can. That's the spectrum of hauntings, and it's so interesting to me.
I think we mentioned this book last time, but a really good book full of case studies on hauntings, the different types of hauntings, and like approaches for how to protect yourself is Dion Fortune's Psychic Self-Defense.
Oh, Dion Fortune's like, we need to get that and put it on our
I might even
bookshelf.
have 2 copies. I should bring one over because
I would read that.
some of my favorite case studies were I've already talked about the knife one a few times, but there's one, he had a client who was living in a home and she had just moved into this house. She got a really fucking good deal on it. And it was on this like row of houses that were all super fancy.
That's a red flag.
Red flag. Huge red flag.
Huge red flag.
If there's a huge discount on a fancy house, run.
No reason.
You don't need it. Rent the apartment instead.
Sure, you can like go get in there.
Hire
first,
me
maybe.
or someone else to like take a look at it before you move it. Before you send in the offer.
Offering you should offer.
Bitch. I think I will.
I'll like help some way. I would love to do that.
I would love to do that. Before you close on your house, call me.
Grounded. I can ground like a plug in the ground.
I
can
love
do that.
Yes.
I don't know.
Coming soon.
That would be before you move in.
That's what I'm saying. Before you move in, before you send in that offer, call me. And I will do a walkthrough with you, just like a housing inspector looks for like electrical shit. Like
it's like you're going to call the inspector before you sign your lease or your lease.
I will be the spirit inspector.
Spirit inspectors.
Because here's the thing.
I'm all inserting myself into this.
Most places are haunted. There's spirits everywhere all the time. The best analogy I can give is like walking down the sidewalk in New York on a weekday at 7 a.m. How packed it is.
Yeah.
That's how the world is with spirits all the time. But most of them are pretty chill. And it's just a matter of like being cool with them. Yeah. Or they like
nomies.
Don't even care that you're there.
I have a nomie.
They're like so busy in their own world. They're like, they don't even see you or care that you're there. But some do.
Sometimes they take your things.
We are definitely going to, we're going to work on that.
I would love to do that.
Yeah. Oh, but okay.
Anyways.
So this person got a discount on a house on like Millionaires Row, right? And she's super excited, like moving all her shit in. And she kept finding herself walking up to the 2nd story window and feeling the compulsion
to jump out,
to throw herself out. And so she called Dion Fortune and he did a little investigation and he found out that it used to be, I can't remember if it was like an asylum.
Right.
Or if it was...
like a boarding place for...
Exactly. That type of thing.
Facility.
And somebody had done exactly that. And even though she wasn't seeing his spirit, it was the imprint
the energy,
of that event.
Energetic compulsion to do so.
That like kept... So she had to sell the house. She had to leave.
Wow. It was that bad. Yeah, that's a haunting. That's a type of haunting.
And there are some imprints that like no matter what you do, you could tear the house down and build something new, and like that energy will stay there. But also what it reminds me of is the same way really traumatic things can leave an everlasting imprint. Joyful things can leave an imprint as well.
Hauntings can be joyful. I don't think the word haunting or haunted is necessarily a negative thing. And I know that our audience identifies with that because I think a lot of people are into spookies and spooky culture because there's some sort of joy and like happy memories about Halloween or having those types of experiences and like reliving them and even spirits can be positive spirits. I mean, we talk about our guides all the time. Well, what do we think those are? You know, they're spirits.
They're spirits, yeah.
And they're on that same spectrum of haunting, you know.
Or like if you live in a home and you're really happy there.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you won't have hard times, but you're happy there and you lead a generally like joyful life. If you move out, whoever moves in has the benefit of the energy imprint that you've left there of like joy. And maybe it's community, maybe it's family, maybe it's cooking, maybe it's success, whatever.
Yeah.
But like that good stuff stays imprinted on the place, and the next people get to enjoy the benefit of that. And I think like, that's really fucking cool.
And how their energy can like carry that through or just mesh well with the new. That's how I feel about our house. The person who owned our house before us told us about it. Like, I love this house. There's been weddings in the backyard. There's been parties. There's been a lot. It sounded like there was a lot of just the people that lived here before we did. Not him, but they were like musicians. And I remember coming in to see the house when their shit was still here. And there was like music instruments everywhere. And like they looked cool, you know.
It had
and there were a lot of people. Yeah. So I think I think for whatever reason that's true of our house, and it definitely was different than the place I lived before, which was creepy. Yeah. And weird. and I used to live in the old MGM backlot.
Oh my God, that place is haunted.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, you know, there is a man-made lake. I think they shot like the original Creature of the Black Lagoon there. Like I lived in this condominium. And it was very, like old producers and stuff. Actors used to have their dressing rooms there. There were a lot of old people living there left over from like that time. Like parents used to live there when I was there. Yeah, it was just like a weird community, like right by Sony. So you probably know what I'm talking about if you know where like Sony is, and then off Overland, and it was there. And yeah, it was like all these big wooden red buildings, and it was just like weird, you know. A lot of that kind of leftover energy.
I was talking to my mentor about this not too long ago, but Los Angeles is in this really unique position of being a place where people from all over the world aspired to come to achieve their greatness. Yeah. And while there are people who have made it, there are so many that got lost.
So much heartbreak here.
So much heartbreak, so much pain, so much. Like LA in the 20s and 30s and 40s, like people didn't want to go downtown for a reason. Yeah. It was also extremely dangerous. Yeah. For a certain amount of time. And so, like...
debauchery.
Yeah, there's a lot of debauchery, you know? There was prohibition.
Taking advantage of and...
Exactly.
Sexual assaults.
All over, even today.
Even today. Of course, but yeah.
But, like, there's so much pain in addition to the, like, kind of like majesty of this place. And all of those spirits, many of them are still here. Still walking around our city streets. Like Marilyn Monroe is still at the Roosevelt.
Allegedly, yeah.
She's there.
Is that your favorite? What's your favorite like LA ghost? Because I have one.
So at the Biltmore, I met this ghost of a little Victorian girl with black shiny shoes, a white dress, and a black bow in her hair. And she followed me around when I unwell. My personal poltergeist. She reminded me of like Samantha from American Girl Dolls. Oh my gosh. That was the vibe. What about you?
I really like this story. I haven't seen a ghost per se. Well, I did get possessed that one time. I think I already told that story though.
You did.
I got possessed at this old abandoned hospital that I was shooting a short film at. And I was briefly possessed, and I said a lot of weird things, and it was very masculine, and then I ran out of the building. So, yeah. It's a lot of scary masculine energy. And that was a hospital that had a lot of, like, gang violence in the 80s and things like that. And, like, a lot of men went through there that were probably like we're gonna die, or gunshot wounds and things like that, stabbings. Anywho, that was fun. But my favorite story is Peg Entwistle. Do you know the Peg Entwistle?
Yes.
You must. She jumped from the O of the Hollywood sign. It was one of the letters of the H. Maybe it was the H. She was an aspiring actress. She came to LA. She didn't get a part, or like her career wasn't going well. And she jumped off of the Hollywood sign and herself and unalived herself. And she allegedly haunts that trail area to this day.
Oh.
And you'll see like her skeletal face of Peg Entwistle. Creepy.
This is reminding me that I gave a reading. It was probably either earlier this year or last year. Oh my God.
What?
To one of my clients who's an aspiring musician, performer. And a spirit came through, and she said that, like, she was like the lady of the Hollywood sign.
What? No way.
Yes.
Oh, that's her.
And she wore all white.
What?
And she liked my client. She was like, I see you. Whoa.
The lady of the Hollywood sign?
I'm not going to channel her right now. I feel her close, though.
No.
But
sorry, Peg.
She was like in a good place, though.
She probably really likes being talked about, and that's probably why.
She was in a good place when I channeled her.
Oh, good.
You could tell she doesn't like everybody. She's very
She
particular.
does get a lot of attention still. And talked about. She's a legend.
She received the infamy
Yes,
and death
that she
could not
wanted in life.
achieve in life.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Well, bless you, Peg. I
Bless
hope you're
you,
doing well.
Peg.
We're happy to share your story on this podcast.
Bless you, Peg.
Bless you, Peg.
Oh my God, that's so crazy. I
That
didn't
is
know that story.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Well.
That's a great one.
Los Angeles, man. One time I was at a tattoo shop in Echo Park, and I kept feeling like there was a spirit sitting on top of one of the shelves. I was like, who is that? And then we weren't playing any music in there, but like a voice came through the speakers on the wall. And I was like, who is that? And then I did like some divination. I was channeling, and her name was Sarah, and she was like a Pachuca girl.
Yeah.
And she was like, I grew up on this street. I used to walk up and down this street.
That's cool.
And she was talking about like the 40s and Los Angeles and her family, and how like she hangs out at the tattoo shop because she feels comfortable there.
That's
and
awesome.
It was really cute. She was really cute.
Oh, that style is so good.
There's so many spirits in this city. It's wild. That was a really good story.
Thank you.
Do you know any more?
God, I don't know. But you know what we do have? A very special treat for you.
We do.
As some of you know, we asked our listeners to send in their haunted tales, and quite a few of you responded.
With some incredible stories.
Incredible, interesting stories. So we are going to read them now to you live on this podcast.
Yeah.
So without further ado, we present Haunted Tales from the Binders.
Do you want to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
I will go first.
I'm so excited.
Okay.
Laura actually hasn't read them. I read them because I was like, I have to make sure that I'm not going to lose my mind reading these.
I read one of them. Somebody had to read them to make sure
Somebody
they were
had to
not.
screen them.
Yes.
And for some reason, I decided it should be me before
And-
bed.
Yes. And that person was Caitlin. So, yes, I am reading most of these for the first time. This story is from Jordan, the old tenant. Hey, Caitlin and Laura. I am a huge fan of the pod, and I get so elated when you pop up on my Spotify every week.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
You've both helped me to feel so confident and validated in my witchy experiences, and I admire you both so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jordan.
Glad we could help. Okay, spooky story time. In 2019, I moved into a very old Art Deco unit in Melbourne, Australia. When I found the place, I was head over heels for the unit due to its crown moldings and original wooden floors. Yes. Mm-hmm. The day my ex-partner and I moved in, we were a little taken aback as the previous tenant had left a bunch of their old stuff behind. My ex wanted to throw all the tenant's things away. However, I had an overwhelming feeling not to move or even touch any of it. My partner begrudgingly obliged, and we integrated our things around the old tenant. What? Inevitably, my ex and I split up. It was an extraordinarily difficult breakup, and my mom and grandma came and helped clean the unit out to give me a fresh start. Whilst I was at work, thank you for the use of the word whilst. Amazing. They donated all of the old tenants' belongings. I appreciated the sentiment, but it made me nervous. A few weeks later, my new roommate, Sophie, moved in. Very quickly, we both began to feel watched, and no matter the temperature outside, the unit became unbearably cold.
That's not good.
To the point where our fingers would turn yellow and blue.
That's not good.
No. I found myself thinking of the old tenant, a young man named Teddy. I had never met nor seen the old tenant, yet he would flick across my mind like a memory. His sweet smile, soft nature, his natural artistic talent. Slowly, I began to feel his actual presence in the unit. His form like an almost mirage in the corner of my bedroom or in the hallway. Like he was there, but not there, behind a few sheets of reality. That's beautiful.
Ooh.
I began conversing with him in my mind, and our strange relationship bloomed into a friendship. I had no way of knowing whether he was actually the old tenant or if I was slowly losing grip on reality. So I asked the neighbors. They explained with grim expressions that the old tenant's name was Teddy. He was a young graphic designer, and he completed suicide in the main bedroom, my bedroom, 5 months before we moved in.
Oh my God, that's fresh.
Yeah, this shook Sophie and I, as we knew weird things had been happening. However, we ultimately were okay with it because Teddy was by no means sinister. However, as 2020 began, and thus the emergence of the pandemic, Teddy's energy shifted.
Yeah, I bet.
In my daily interactions with him, I felt his energy shifting from melancholy sweetness into more rageful aggression. Mm-hmm. As Melbourne plummeted into 246 days of the world's strictest lockdown, we became trapped in a haunted house.
Oh, fuck. Oh. Literally with nowhere to go.
I remember how strict that lockdown was. Yeah. That was not a fun time. I began having terrible nightmares about my family being decapitated and waking up suddenly to Teddy leaning over me, his face inches from mine. Another night, Sophie and her boyfriend were watching a movie in the lounge room, and I was making dinner in the kitchen. There was a terrifying bang and a scream from Sophie as the mirror in the lounge room flew off the wall and skidded to my feet in the kitchen. Simultaneously, all of our little ornaments in the lounge room shattered, except for a little Virgin Mary statue that Soph had collected for ironic purposes. It reached a peak a week later. Soph was up at 4 a.m. getting ready for an early nursing shift. As she was dressed, her bedroom door suddenly banged with a loud thud, thud, thud. As Soph opened the door, she heard footsteps running down the hall, and my bedroom door swung open. Worried for me, she ran to my room and found me murmuring and tossing restlessly in my sleep. I was in a deep, horrific nightmare. Soph, absolutely freaked, decided to lock it from her mind and quickly left for work. I woke up a few hours later to my office chair wheeling back and forth beside my bed. My room so cold you could see my breath. I whispered, "Teddy, please, you're scaring me. Stop now." The chair stopped moving, and a wave of Teddy's immense sadness washed over me. Teddy was lost and scared too, and he needed my help. I imagined a white light surrounding him that stretched up towards the sky. I told him he had permission to move on if he wanted to. He accepted, I felt his presence dissipate, and all paranormal activity stopped for good. Soph and I have theories that when my mom moved his belongings, it stirred up his spirit. As our depression grew during the COVID lockdown, he began to reflect our energy. I sometimes miss him, the true him, but I really hope he is somewhere happy. My experience with Teddy opened my abilities, and I encounter spirits daily. However, I have developed much better boundaries now. Good. P.S. I had an eerily almost identical experience to Laura when I was a kid, with my best friend and I being friends with the same imaginary old woman who would teach us magic tricks. Thank you again for all you do. Warmest, Jordan.
Jordan!
Wow. I thought it was really interesting how the energy started out as one thing and then grew to be very, very scary. But then Jordan had the discernment to not give up on this spirit and know that it was just him sort of acting out due to, I think she was spot on.
This is not uncommon.
Right.
That a spirit comes across as harmless at first, and then the more you talk to them, the more like agitated they become.
It's like a human you'd meet or a person that's
kind
alive.
Of, yes.
Almost.
And I feel like Jordan's situation was very unique because none of us have ever experienced anything like COVID quarantine, COVID lockdown.
Yeah.
But even pre-COVID, it's not, this is why I tell my kids, like, we don't talk to spirits that we don't know.
Just like people.
Just like people.
Again.
We don't talk to people we don't know, because some people can start off as being really charming and fun to talk to and interesting. And then the more we give our energy to them, all of a sudden there's this shift. And that's very common with like trickster spirits. Especially the more malevolent trickster spirits. You'll find this theme is common in a lot of like scary movies.
Yeah.
And it's not that unusual for a spirit to start out as being like kind of friendly, kind of interesting, almost alluring.
It's a form of shape-shifting.
Attractive.
Or glamour, even.
And then all of a sudden you're like, what's going on? And it's because that's how they hook you, and they start getting your energy because you want to talk to them now. You want to engage with them.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, when I encounter spirits who are deceased, especially if they've had a hard time, like, my immediate reaction is to do elevation work for them so that they can move on. Because the longer you keep them around, even though it's fun at first, like, it always goes south.
Do you think that all spirits that are tied to the earth that are lost in that way need to be elevated and moved on? Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. They all need elevation if they're stuck.
If they want to stay and if they're happy.
If they want, there are some spirits, I call them landcestors. And those are spirits who've like dealt with their earthly stuff, but their calling is to return to the land.
Right.
And be like guardians or be protectors. But
of
what
like
I
their
found
spaces.
Of spaces or their people or their cultures. But what I found with like other earthbound spirits who are having trouble elevating because they want to stay, there's always something that they're holding on to that not only gets in their way, but it ends up getting in their descendants' way as well. Even if it's like things that are seemingly harmless. Like I can't tell you how many femmes I've dealt with where like their grandparents were really overly protective. And they're like, we just don't want you to experience what we've experienced. But it stops the living from like getting to actually enjoy their life. And so even though they were doing something out of the kindness of their heart and they were attached out of the kindness of their heart, it was causing suffering for the living. And so we had to elevate them on.
That's very interesting. On the show that I watched, Kindred Spirits and some other shows, I think their take is like they don't try to move spirits on. Maybe because that's not really, they're not mediums, and that's why mediums are important to have in paranormal investigations. I think mediums that know how to do that elevation work, because there's a difference between like helping a spirit move on to what they need to do, or what they sometimes maybe they don't know that they need to do that. Yeah. And then kicking something out without easing, you know what I mean? In a violent way, like just trying to like get rid of a spirit without
your jaw and swallowing it whole.
Yeah. when they don't deserve it, or when they're not a Lancester, you know, and it's just, I've seen them be like, we don't do that. And that's, you know, that's their discernment. Yeah. But they're like, we don't think that all spirits need to be moved on. So it's just interesting to ask because it's interesting to think about.
Well, and I'm sure like in every culture, it's going to be a little different.
Yeah, but that makes sense to me. I mean, that's great. Wow, what a great story.
That was a really good story. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you, Jordan.
Okay, so this story is from Monique. Interestingly, New Zealand.
We did get several like stories from Australia and New Zealand. Interesting. And then we had some repeat names.
Do we have fans?
Do we have fans? Do we have Kiwis?
Australia, New Zealand? That's cool. Oh my God, there's a lot of Caitlyns in here.
I gave you all the Caitlyn names.
I love Caitlyns. I love Katie's.
I love first two stories that we got, their names were Caitlyn. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to give the Caitlyns to Caitlyn.
I love surrounding myself with other people that have the same name. I used to live with two other Katies.
That's great.
And we would all just shout, Kate, Kate, across the house. And it was so fun. And we knew which Kate we were talking about somehow.
Amazing.
I don't know.
I'm excited.
This is a story from Monique. And Monique, when I read this, I was like, what? So I cannot wait to read it for all of you.
I'm ready.
Okay. Hi, I'm Monique, and I'm from New Zealand. I moved into a house with my friend a couple months ago. She kept telling me that there were strange things going on, but I didn't think it was dark energy, so I moved in anyway. About a week into me living there, things started to get crazy. You could hear people running through the house from morning to night, keeping in mind that nobody lived above or below us. We were in a house, not an apartment. One evening, I just remembered what the story said. One evening, I was out of the house because my landlord was showing people around the property as we were moving out in a month. When I came back home, I turned my car into the driveway and saw a woman in a red coat standing in front of my house. My friend who was in the car with me saw her as well, so I backed out of the driveway and parked on the street. We sat in the car for about 10 minutes waiting for my landlord to leave the property, but she never came out. We decided to go back down the driveway to see what was going on because it was almost 8 o'clock. The lights in my house were off. Nobody was in there. We looked around the entire outside of the house, and the woman could not be found. A few days later, me and my cousin decided to try LSD for the first time. Why not? My friend and her boyfriend were sober to make sure we didn't do anything stupid. Love that. Everything was fine until the sun went down. The house had this energy about it, which we could only describe as The Conjuring. It was very sinister. I made the mistake of looking into the mirror, and I saw this woman in a mirror who wasn't me. My sober friend saw her as well. I think I must have accidentally opened a portal and let her out because she wasn't in the mirror anymore. No, she was outside my bedroom window. She was running around the house. She was under my bed. She was everywhere. My sober friend saw everything too and actually started crying, telling me we needed to leave the house. I told her, no, I have an idea.
What?
I'm not proud of this, But I made a deal with the entity. I told her she couldn't have any of our bodies, but she could have somebody else's. I sent the entity to someone's house that had wronged me in the past. Monique is vicious.
Oh my God, Monique, you are goals.
I don't know what happened to them, nor have I heard from them since. But as soon as I sent her away, all the activity in the house just stopped.
Wow.
I still have no explanation for what went down in that particular house, but I do know I never want to go back there again.
Holy shit, Monique. Okay. You sent... you made you know what? That's pretty level-headed. You said, wait a sec. In your LSD, whatever was happening. I don't know if this is when you were still on LSD or not. But there are options here. And I'm protecting myself.
By sending her to thine enemies.
To thine enemies. That is kind of badass.
It's vicious.
I'm not above that type of vengeance.
It is vengeance for sure.
Look, you did what you had to do, and you took care of it. You took care of it. Are you sure about that? Are you sure about that? Wow. I mean, look, karma comes in many forms. Sometimes it's sending a red-coated entity to your enemy's house.
This is a wild one. I definitely felt like tingles when I was reading this.
Yeah, I got nice visuals from it.
I got really good visuals from it.
Really creepy.
I'm not going to say how I feel.
Look,
about
I know that was not, I'm kidding. It's not the best situation.
Something I will talk about is that as a medium, as like a psychically and spiritually sensitive person, I've come to the awareness that like I can't do psychedelics.
Oh, I as a normal person can't do psychedelics either.
I can't take mushrooms. I become way too open.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Way too open.
What happened?
And I kind of wonder if it's connected to
absolutely.
that. Yeah, like Monique is the psychically sensitive person, and Monique was extra open because of the LSD. And like, there's nothing wrong with like doing recreational drugs. You did all the right things. You had sitters.
Yeah,
good for you.
LSD plus
not
mirrors
judging.
Equals whoa.
Yeah, like I wouldn't look in a mirror on psychedelics anyway. That's always bad.
And you already have activity. Like whoa.
I'm glad everyone's okay now.
You took care of it. Heary.
You
took care of it.
Spray a little cleansing spray after that.
Yeah, give me some too. Okay. The red coat.
Ooh, fucked me up a little bit.
The red coat, like being that's a bold fashion choice for a spirit. I wonder why. Don't know. That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
Fascinating.
Bravo.
Honestly, that felt like a poltergeist.
And thank you for being honest, because you could have been like, I called in a priest, and then no, you were just like, go over to Susie's house over there.
And like, you can't hold that shit in forever. So thank you for telling us about it.
Rarely, in all the paranormal stuff that I digest, entertainment-wise, not literally, I've never heard of anybody sending the fucking entity to someone's
another house. That is pretty radical.
Pretty fucking smart and radical and interesting.
My dress is falling off.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you want to read one more?
Yes. This is from Sarah. There's no title. Hello, Caitlin and Laura. I have a spooky and not so spooky story to share with you. I used to work at my local youth and recreation center, once an old school.
This is a good one.
It was no secret the building was quite haunted, and it was norm to hear footsteps, etc. It was never anything too crazy, and I always wore my selenite kyanite necklace to work and felt perfectly comfortable. The last night of one of our winter recreation sessions, however, was wildly different. For whatever reason, someone decided we should play the game Manhunt. Who thought this was a good name for a kid's game? LOL.
Truly.
What was
the reason?
Which is basically just hide and seek in the dark as a last treat for the year. Why not just call it hide and seek?
Hide and seek in the dark? Okay.
It reminds me of that movie or the book where they hunt the people. The people get hunted.
Oh, Most Dangerous Game?
Yes.
Yeah.
Dangerous Game. Where was I? We had come to the part of the night where we had to tell anyone else who was still hiding that it was time to come out and get ready to go home.
Ollie, ollie, oxen free.
As I was walking through the halls, I heard a loud pounding against the walls coming from the stage cafeteria area. I walked into the room, and one of my coworkers came in from the gym to the next door over. I had thought the noise might be coming from in there, and she thought it might have been me. The noise was so booming, it was as though someone was tapping a microphone or doing construction work on the cinder block back wall of the stage. But no one else was in the building besides recreation leaders and the kids, and I was racking my brain trying to understand how a kid could possibly make such a loud noise. After no responses, it's time to get out from there it's time to get out from there from my coworker and I. She 1, 2, 3 nodded at me to get on the stage and check things out. The curtains had been closed. And I did my best to embody my inner badass witch / Dean Winchester. I hear you. I validate that. Dean's a badass. Of course, I couldn't find the light switch, so I descended stage right and made my way across the stage. It was covered in gymnastics equipment for classes the next day, which made my task at hand all the more unnerving, trying to brace myself in the event a 7-year-old popped out to scare me in the dark from behind something that I would not accidentally hurt anyone out of fright. I reached stage left and stopped just before the other staircase. The closer I got, my insides went cold and my brain immediately went, I am not supposed to be here. Do you see anyone? My coworker asked me quietly from the room. Okay, they didn't yell. Did you see anyone? My coworker asked me quietly from the room. Kayla, there's no one here. I got down from the stage as quickly as I could, and we left the room. It was the most intense experience I've ever had. I wish more was known about the history of the building, but based on its location and the area of the land itself, I feel like it might have had a lot of troubled spirits inhabiting it. Needless to say, I came home and bathed with salts and did a lot of protection and cleansing of myself. On a happier note, I also have a very sweet story to share. When I was 9, my papa passed away. This is not the sweet part, LOL. He and I were incredibly close, best buddies. His passing was completely unexpected. I spent the next week in bed, home from school, trying to understand a world without my best friend in it. The first day I had stayed home, it was just my mom and I at home. She was downstairs doing laundry, and I was laying in her bed. Out of nowhere, from the corner of the room, I heard the sound of a kiss. My little 9-year-old brain took it in for a second and immediately knew what it meant. I did a little back. It was such a special moment to have had, and I hold it close. Oh,
that's really sweet.
One last thing. It isn't really a story, but I think Laura will enjoy this. Thank you all for thinking of me. On occasion, I can hear the nails of my sweet beagle my family had until I was a baby scattering and tapping across our wooden floors. The first time it really surprised me, but now it just makes me smile. I know the sound exactly. I have not heard that noise from my dearly departed hound. And it makes me sad, but whatever. Whatever, it's not about me. Thank you for sharing. Thank you both for all the magic you create and for always keeping it real and making me laugh too. Blessed be Sarah. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. Also, thank you everyone for really taking it to the next level as a creative writing project.
Grammatically
These
on
narratives
point.
are incredible. You're really bringing us to the place
The time, the zone, the experience.
Sarah, if you're comfortable with letting us know, like, where that rec center was privately, like, I would love to investigate some more about, like, the history of the space. Because now I'm curious, too.
I know. Thank you so much.
Should I do one short one, and then we'll save the rest for our patrons?
Ooh, sure.
Okay.
One last story.
Let's see. I read that one. This short one or this short one? What do you think?
Let's do this one.
Okay. This one's from Vanessa. So all the Caitlin stories will be on Patreon. Hi, I love your Instagram and pod. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have many ghost stories, or more like experiences with spirits. This was my first real experience with a spirit that changed everything for me. It was the summer of 1995. My family lived in a 3-bedroom apartment on a second-floor walk-up. My mother was a single parent who had creative ways in making sure we used the little money we had to keep us cool. Can I just take a moment? In 1995, single parents used to be able to afford a 3-bedroom apartment.
Wow.
And in 2023, 2 parents can barely afford a 1-bedroom apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
context.
I'm taking you back.
Reel it back.
Reel it back in. My mother was a single parent who had creative ways in making sure we used the little money we had to keep us cool. In doing so, she built a curtain retaining wall in the hallway between 2 rooms to keep the air conditioner flowing between us. The curtain was held up with anchors and a strong pull, so when my 6-year-old brother would run and pull it, it wouldn't budge. It held up for an entire summer of kids running through the hallway until this one night. My mother, a devout Catholic, had us say our nightly prayers with her in her room as we knelt at the foot of her bed. Her room was at the end of the hall adjacent to a painting of Our Lady of Guadalupe. I was kneeling alongside my mother, facing the bedroom door. My sister knelt across from me with her back towards the doorway, and my younger brother sat in bed while we all prayed. While praying, I suddenly saw something that caught my eye. I looked out into the hallway and witnessed a large, shadow-like figure as tall as our 8-foot ceiling slowly lift the hallway curtain up, then peer into our room. My mother yelled at us to remain in the room, and she ran out after it. Our apartment was small, and being on the top floor, we had 13 steps from the front door to our hallway. In a matter of seconds, the shadow figure was gone. My mother ran into the hallway, past the steps, front door, and into the kitchen. She grabbed a knife and looked in every room, every closet, and checked every window. Everything was closed, still, and calm. She says she stayed up all night sitting in the living room, while all us kids went to bed in her room together. Early the next morning, we went to leave our apartment, and the door handle on the large steel metal door was hanging out of its socket from the inside. My mother, terrified that someone had broken in, called the cops and our superintendent to fix the door. When the super came over with his large hand wrench and toolbox, my mother told him how someone had broken into our home. He paused, looked at her, and said, "No, ma'am, someone wasn't trying to break in. It looks like someone was trying to break out." Somehow, we knew it wasn't a person. The shadow was too tall. There was no definition to their body. They disappeared as quickly as they came. Our door handle wasn't broken that night. Our hallway curtain remained on the floor, and my memory of what I saw never vanished. Shortly after that moment, strange things began to happen in the apartment. I saw shadow figures, most of them my height, walking around. We heard noises that sounded like a jacket swishing up and down the hallway, and random items would randomly be thrown across the room. We got our house blessed multiple times by priests. We prayed, but it continued for years. It was never the same as the tall shadow figure, but many other spirits chose to walk through that home. Nothing ever like that moment. The moment I knew we weren't alone.
Wow.
It's fucked up.
Snap, 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 snap.
It's fucked up. Vanessa, again, short story, like
excellent.
Excellent.
Writing skills. All
Make
of
this
you.
into a little novella. That was really good.
Looks like Edgar Allan Poe.
am sorry you experienced that. That is fucking terrifying. Yeah. The door broken off from the inside. The fuck? Your poor mom. Oh my God. Your poor mom.
Yeah.
Just
that's
like
a lot. Grabbing a knife and just
all by herself, like trying to manage 3 kids who are probably all freaking out. Like, oh my God.
A lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Ugh.
Do we scare him away?
Should we just keep going?
What do we do?
Wait, Mike's not here. This feels weird.
What do we do?
Like Garth, I'm just like, you ever seen that scene in Scanners?
Mike's gonna come back and have so much to edit out.
I know. Oh shit, he can't make his notes. Edit us out.
Sorry.
Edit us out. Well, that was great.
Hot damn.
Hot damn, everybody.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. Thank you for
so much.
The time and effort you put into writing those stories. They're incredible.
They're incredible. Thank you for tuning in to Third Eye Bind this season.
Yes.
That's it.
Thank you for supporting us over the last 4 seasons. It's incredible. We are so grateful and honestly kind of overwhelmed by all of the support that we've received.
Yes.
And if you want to hear more ghost stories, we will be reading the rest of them on Patreon. Mm-hmm. And I think we might do a little season 4 wrap up.
We're going to do a season 4 wrap up video as well. So
just for our patrons.
Just for patrons. So if you're a patron, keep an eye out for that.
Yes. And it's patreon.com/thirdeyebind.
Right. And we're going to start cooking up our season 5.
I know. We've already got ideas for season 5.
We have ideas. Mm-hmm. If you have suggestions for episodes, feel free to send them to us.
Yes.
Let us know. Just DM us or email us or whatever.
We have a submission form on our website now to make it really easy.
Yeah, if there's something you want to hear about or hear more about, we're down. We're down for suggestions.
We love hearing from you.
We are very excited to start planning. What?
By the time this airs, it will almost be
our one-year anniversary of the pod. So
July 17th.
Yes, July 17th will be 1 year. And maybe we'll do something special for Patreon or maybe an extra bonus episode in between seasons. We'll do something.
Or maybe
to
a party
celebrate.
for the locals? What do
or
you
maybe
think?
A best of cut episode or something.
That'd be really cute.
See.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
We'll figure something out. Or I would really like some cake.
I would love some
cake. That would be great.
Well, thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you.
And thank all of you for tuning in
to Third Eye Bind.
Be sure to leave us a message on the Third Eye line. Until next season. Goodbye.
Returning to the grave.
Thank you so much for listening. You can follow the podcast at Third Eye Bind Pod on Instagram. There, submit your questions via the Third Eye line by sending us a voice message or text DM. The show is available wherever you listen to podcasts and for you to watch on YouTube. Get early access to episodes and even monthly one-on-one sessions with us by joining our Patreon. Find us at patreon.com/thirdeyebind. Third Eye Bind is produced and edited by Mike Realm. Hosted by Caitlin Grania and Laura Wong. Music by Mike Realm. Set design by Laura Wong. You can find Laura on Instagram at LadyMoonCo, and you can find Caitlin at caitlin.grania.